Okay, I think we're live now. So everybody, welcome to the Node.js Community Build Working Group meeting for June 12th, 2018. We'll start with the agenda as posted in the issue. Oops, now I gotta find that issue again. Sorry. I've got too many windows open. Okay, so we have a fairly packed agenda here. So first of all, does anybody have any announcements that they want to make before we get starting? Okay, I guess not. Moving on to the list of things on the agenda item. The first one is discussion about current state of workgroup membership with a few sub-bullets in terms of security release issues and sub-teams for build. So I don't know is John on? Do you want to start that issue?
Yeah, I'm here. Just we were having issues last night, myself and Refael, dealing with because there's a release going out today, and
Yep.
we were having a lot of issues testing it in the private repo, and because all of the Jenkins jobs were using HTTPS to pull down the Git repo, and that's not going to work if it's a private. So we had to go through and edit all the sub jobs to get it to work, and it was a little bit of a last minute scramble. Just if we had a better heads up that the release was coming and to test out the infrastructure beforehand.
So basically you had to edit the jobs in Jenkins because they don't work against the private repo. Is that the...
Yeah, it was using HTTPS to pull down the repo, and that's fine if it's a public repo. But if it's private, then it says you need to have like a password to like log in or whatever.
Yes.
So we had to change it to use a different scheme to pull it down.
Right. I wonder what we've done in the past for that.
It looked like we in the past used to have a parameter for people to pick.
Right.
But for now, I just changed everything to be the other way.
Okay.
And that should work fine for the public too.
Right.
Yeah. Like I had opened up a pull request that a bunch of people had approved in Node.js Node just to require that when people are getting ready to push out releases to give a heads up. Because we've also had issues that like the website won't update with blog posts and those type of issues. Just so we know like that there's a release coming, so we know to be ready in case there are problems.
So that's a great idea. I'm just thinking, and I guess on the test issue, we should think about what makes sense in terms of an easy switch back and forth. Or are you saying what you did is sort of as long as it's in that format, it's okay for both of them?
It should be okay in this format for both of them, but I had also put in that if possible, a day or two before the release comes out for us to try against like the master branch of the private repo where there shouldn't be anything that's confidential, just to make sure that it can actually pull down from the private repo.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the switch was to switch from HTTPS to HTTP or something else?
SSH, I assume.
Yeah.
It would have been using the SSH certs, yeah.
Okay, so it's... Okay.
Which should work with a public or private repo. So we should be okay now that the change has been made, I believe.
Okay, so we switched to use SSH instead of HTTPS. Okay, got it. Makes sense now. Okay. But if the people need to do additional ones, then yeah, okay, makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then just along with this, there were two very quick action items that Joy and I had brought up just to slightly reorganize the GitHub teams so it's easier for people to ping. So right now, all the different GitHub teams are like separate teams in the UI, but we can make it that way. There's a new feature in GitHub called like child teams, where you can create teams that are like nested. So it was just to make the change in the UI. That way they're nested. That way people can better see how everything's like organized. That was the only action item with this.
Okay. Yeah, that seems to make sense. I know we're already using those sub teams in other places, so.
Yeah, I believe we're using them like with collaborators and core for the subsystems and stuff. So I was figuring that would be okay.
Right. Okay. Anything else you want to say on that front?
No, that's it for that one, I believe.
Okay. Okay. So the next thing we have is there's actually a number of issues which are basically, requests to join the group. I thought it was worth asking a couple questions on that front in terms of, I think at least one person had mentioned that their interest was like specifically in helping out on, in the CI if machines are stuck or whatever, being able to get onto the machine and being able to do that kind of stuff versus just general participation. So maybe understanding do people want to come in and jump in and participate in all sorts of stuff, or just participate in one specific thing would probably be a good sort of context to frame on those requests as well.
At least for me, my main motivation is to be able to troubleshoot PRs that are failing and have access to the CI machines to be able to do that. And not so much at the moment to join the other activities, if that is okay.
Okay, yeah, to help trouble. Because we had talked about that before and how to enable people to do that kind of activity. So it's good to have, a concrete case here where you want to help out and do that to push that forward. I guess the other people, what's your general interest?
I'm the other person on that list. I thought there was only two. Yeah.
There's a couple. There's two others that don't have people's names or the next two, but
yeah, I'd be certainly happy. So what got me engaged and interested in this was more CI stability and getting that fail rate number down. But I'm certainly happy to help out wherever I can get my hands into.
Okay.
Hi, everybody I haven't met. I'm Adam. I'm a ComCom member over on the other side of things. And I also work at LinkedIn in the front-end build infra space. But my interest is in nothing specific. I'm just, I saw that there was room to help, and this is something I deal with fairly frequently over at LinkedIn. I thought I might be able to contribute where I'm needed.
Sounds good.
And I'm probably the third person there. I'm Luca. Hi. And I have a similar motivation. I saw that you were looking for more help there. I have some experience in CI, and I'm working near form in a team that basically take care of infrastructure. So I'm more than happy to help with automation and whatever is needed. That's hard.
Yeah, like we're in the middle of migrating. In the past, we had separate playbooks for each of the different platforms that we used, like for Ubuntu like 14.04 and Ubuntu 16.04. And one thing that I've been trying to push hard on is migrating down to just one playbook that we can run. So there are a few like stragglers left in the setup directory, and that's something, so that way we can actually like go through all the platforms and make sure they're all up and they all have the right things configured and stuff. That's something that's a little bit more of like a long-term project, but that's something that really needs to get done.
Yeah, I think a whole push on that front does make sense. Matthias, what's your interest?
I'm Matheus. I'm interested in helping improve the reliability for CI infrastructure, as well as usability for collaborators and non-collaborators.
Okay, and reliability. Okay, so it sounds to me like the first priority for onboarding everybody is to sort of enable to help out on the CI side, and then sort of take it from there, because that sounds like, I guess, out of the Collaborator Summit, I'm not surprised that there was a lot of discussion around that, and so it would be a good way to get started. Now I guess I'm just like Refael and John, and I think I saw Joao was on too, but or no, Johan. Like, what are the key things that we think people need to do in terms of getting machines back when there's problems in the CI? Is it? I know one is the most obviously, often restarting the Jenkins agent, cleaning up processes. Are there other things people need to be able to do?
So I think there are a couple of things that can be done even through the Jenkins script console. So like first tier support is cleaning up space. So we get either corrupt workspaces or running out of disk space. Both of those can be fixed with wipe workflow, a wipe workspace from the Jenkins GUI. Second thing is killing processes, or the flip side of that, making the test suite more stable or more self-contained. Second phase of that is like Dockerizing more things. And the third thing is, like I said, playing with the Jenkins agent. If it gets stuck, needs a restart, needs an upgrade, things like that, that will require SSH access to the machine.
Right. Does the kill processes support. So kill processes can be done through the console as well?
As long as the processes are triggered by the Jenkins process, IO.js, then you can kill them with a script. You don't need root access. And the script console runs without sudo access. So I'm just saying that's easy to accomplish. First tier support through the GUI, second tier support through SSH, and obviously third tier support is infra access. Restarting machines, playing with the available disk space, making sure networks are set up, firewalls are set up, etc. And what I was thinking, and Gibson had this brainstorm a few months ago, was that some of those tasks could be built into Ansible playbooks. For instance, restarting a Jenkins process can be run through Ansible, and Ansible can be stored in it's called an Ansible tower. Maybe Daniel can find somebody in Red Hat who can help us with an Ansible tower. And that gives us like a second GUI that can do hard disk cleanup, restarted processes, things that need root access, with the GUI, and even open that up to all the collaborators. Now, all of this requires, besides DevOps, the day-to-day operations, needs some, developing. We need to set up a tower or the open source version of that. We need to formalize the scripts. We need to make sure our playbooks run on all the machines. We need to make sure, all the everything's documented, etc. So that's like also something that I think the group and the entire collaborator team will appreciate. And what Mateus mentioned is that we can also improve our user experience. Some of the jobs in Jenkins are rickety. Some of them still use TAP to publish the tests, which make them less friendly for the collaborators. We can move more things to pipelines, which are easier to track down and understand. And performance. Performance is always an issue. If we can use more of cache, if we can use pre-built items, if we can, etc. So
Right.
these are, I think, the areas where everybody can help.
Right. So I guess what's the best way to get started? You know, we have some new volunteers. Is it that how do we sort of in the day-to-day thing? You know, you already mentioned a few things that anybody can do, which I guess which we can actually ramp people up to be able to do as needed now, and then we can work through the next things to say, okay, well, like how do we get people, not how, but like getting people the right access so they can do the next steps, like killing processes or restarting the Jenkins agents that you need SSH for. What do you think the best way to sort of push forward on that is?
So I think what John started with writing down like ideas or projects or things like tasks, getting people to adopt a task, making sure then we can make sure they have the right access to perform that task. And that will allow us, I think, the next step. Also, if we can, and I say this, in the broadest sense, we can vet people and give them SSH access.
Yep.
That will also help because now, the people who hold the knowledge, me and John and you and Rich, if we have any time and that we dedicate to the build tasks, it's usually, DevOps. It's usually like playing with the machines, making sure everything's okay, hunting down flakes. And if the group will be larger, then maybe we'd have more time to like organize, write down stuff, collect knowledge,
yep.
Help other people with like more long-term goals.
Right. So it sounds like, from what you've described, the two things, like we need to write down what you do to wipe the workspace, like the first three, which don't require access. Do we have any documentation that explains when and how to do that?
Like I've been working on documenting. I had written up a guide in the doc directory, trying to write down as much as possible, like how to, here, I'll paste the link. How to fix up the machines when they fall over.
Great.
And for me, like this was stuff that like I've been on a huge splurge with documentation recently, just writing down as much as possible. So that way when we have the new people coming in, that they can jump in and everything's written down. They just need to copy and paste in the command. And I think the next step is just getting people to be in the chat room on IRC, because that's where most people come to post when there are problems. It's Node.js Build on Freenode. And just people just being around in the chat room. So that way when collaborators who for the most part view Jenkins as like a black box type thing, they kind of hit build on their pull request and they hope everything goes through. That way we can be there to help and like guide them through, because most of the fixes are not like super bad. There are processes that are hanging out that should have been dumped. The workspace is overflowing. Most of the tasks aren't that complicated. It's just there needs to be someone there to like do it.
Right. So
hey, Michael, I'd like to chip in here if I get a second.
Sorry.
So not all of you know who I am, but I used to be pretty involved in this group, and I wrote the majority of the new Ansible, joint playbooks, if you may. And I spoke to John the other day, and I think I know how most of this works, and for all the tasks that you were mentioning, I had a similar workflow like a year ago. So I have a lot of stubs when it comes to killing processes and automating things through Ansible. So I think I'll try and involve myself again a bit more and collaborate closely with John to knowledge transfer most of the things that I know. And then I also have a few things that I haven't checked in as a pull request, but for instance, working on the W machine and automating that, and I have a few other things. So I think I'll try and be a bit more involved to most importantly, knowledge share, but hopefully also find the time to be a bit more of a regular contributor again. So I guess what I'm saying is that there's a lot of small glue things here that I haven't properly transferred to the build group that I can help out with.
Okay. So I'm just taking notes here.
It's worth just saying, Michael, on the topic of Ansible Tower, we've already had some conversations about this in private, and obviously it's something I've been using for a while on some other open source projects. So if we want an Ansible Tower set up, I could certainly work to get one running. I've already configured a lot of the stuff to work with the inventory scripts that we've got at Node, and also I've managed to get GitHub authentication stuff. So we could probably quite quickly get something in place that we could then tell collaborators to go to and run playbooks that we write.
Would you be able to do a demo like what you did for Keybox at a meeting soon about how to use Tower and stuff? That'd be
absolutely, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, that's one that we definitely wanted to do.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to get the Keybox sort of set up on the roll and then move on to something else. But if we think Tower is a higher priority, I could certainly look at that.
Yeah, I guess which do we think is most important?
I would assume Tower, since those are tasks that we run, on a fairly daily basis. SSH key exchange is done, semi-weekly, even less, that people really need access to the machines.
Okay.
I would say just a pre-thing before we go to Tower is we need to be down to one playbook in Ansible, that we need to be down to the Jenkins worker create playbook. And I'm not sure how much longer that's going to take, but we can't really move to Tower until we're down to the one playbook, because the stuff in setup, I'm not sure how long it's been since that's even been run, and I'm not sure if that even works still. So
right, but isn't the goal...
The idea of Tower is to have smaller playbooks. For instance, kill processes on that machine, or wipe workspace on the other machine, like things that are more self-contained than refreshing a whole setup. I know that's going to take more time.
Yeah, I think the basic playbooks that could go through and listen to processes, look at disk space, they could all be written reasonably easily and added, and we don't have to worry about them all being in a single script or anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then we should PR those into the Ansible directory first, I guess, and get those in, and then we can start figuring out like who even to have access to run those through the Tower UI. If that's just going to be for a build working group, or if that's open to some collaborators or TSC, or how that will work.
I think if we can, fortify, make sure that the playbooks are safe and predictable, I don't see a reason why not to open it up like at the same level that we allow triggering new jobs on CI.
Yeah, I'd agree that if they're just doing things like cleaning out the workspace and not refactoring the whole machine, at least those ones we should pretty easily be able to start with. More people being able to fix it themselves is probably good.
Yeah, I think processes and disk space are probably reasonably safe to open up.
Well, we need to give it a little bit thought, so there won't be, racing too many people running scripts and not knowing each other. But
I think if we,
it's worth pointing out that you can even just have like cron schedulers in Tower, so you could even just have something that automatically runs each night. So you don't necessarily have to have intervention at all.
And I think we can certainly build them up so that we put them in place, have the build team and maybe some extension of that, use them for a while, and then once we're comfortable, make them more broadly available to other people as well.
Makes sense.
I noted a few concrete next steps. So, John's working on this guide. I thought the new volunteers could review the Jenkins guide and ask John for clarity where necessary. The next one was like, ask the volunteers to join Node Build on Freenode and start responding to issues based on, understanding what the guide tells them to do to do the cleanup. Does that make sense?
Yeah, at some point we're gonna need to have a separate like onboarding to give them access and stuff, but that doesn't need to be today because it's already like starting to get late in the hour, but that will need to be something separate. And then we can really run through the Jenkins UI and how all that stuff works.
Yep. Yeah, so I think I was expecting that some of this would definitely be offline. So is it that we should schedule a session for each of the new volunteers with, John, Refael, or whoever else is volunteering to do that?
Yeah, that's how I was onboarded back a couple months ago. My suggestion would be just to set up a time and then run through Jenkins, the way we use it, running playbooks on Ansible, all the stuff you would need to do on a day-to-day basis, and then just answer questions then and stuff. And then we can set up like stuff with Doodle and stuff in the issues to get that
right. Yeah,
I wrote this onboarding guide a while ago. I don't know if it's kept up to date, but I used to do most of the onboarding, and I just ran through it top to bottom and tried to cover all the areas and like share a screen to show how a few things worked until they grew their own confidence. So perhaps we can update that if it's still helpful.
I like it. Joao used it with me. I used it with John and Joey. It's good.
It was certainly useful for me.
Yeah, so then to add on to the next steps, we can set up an onboarding with each of the new people to show them the ropes and how stuff works.
Yeah. So yeah, I added that as a second step because I think the first one can kind of be done to help get things going without being onboarded. Then second is then to actually get through the formal onboarding. Yeah. Johan's going to do pass over some stubs and knowledge transfer. George is going to work on getting the Ansible Tower instance in place, and George is going to do a demo of Keybox.
I thought we already did a demo of Keybox.
A demo of Tower.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put that then underneath there. I just
no more Keybox. We don't want to see that again.
We have it on YouTube anyway.
Yeah. So in terms of concrete next steps of getting new people up to speed, are there other things we should put in here?
No, I think that makes sense. Just even before you get access to the actual Jenkins UI and to all that stuff, just to start reading through some of the documentation to get a feel for how things work, and just to be in the Node Build channel and IRC, just to increase the number of people there would be very useful. Because it's a very limited number of people right now that are around to help fix issues. So even if you're just there, like watching how the other people are helping to respond and stuff, like that's still very useful.
Yeah, no, even triage is very helpful. A collaborator would come in, say, like, I got this huge Java stock trace, but essentially the crux is out of disk space, which you can just wipe the workspace. Doing that sort of thing will be super helpful for everybody.
And John, are most of those things covered in that Jenkins guide so far?
Yeah, I've been trying to consolidate all things that have to do with Jenkins as far as the test cluster Jenkins, ci.node, into one place in a way that's like easy to like get for new people. So that way they can read through it and they can like, at the end of the day, like the machines aren't like super crazy complicated. It's just a Java jar that's running, and the machine will have a process issue. It'll have a disk space issue. You'll have to restart the Java jar. That like, or there's a package that's missing from APT, like that's like the realm as far as the test cluster for the like problems. They're not super like complex. It's just having people there to be able to react and to respond and get things rolling. That's really the big problem right now. And I've been working on docs to try and make that easier.
Sounds good. So the link is in the minutes there. So I guess Daniel, Matthias, you know, does this sound reasonable? Does this make sense to you guys, Luca, as a next step?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Sounds like fun.
Sounds good to me too.
Yes.
Okay, great. Anything else to talk about that issue then before we move on to the next issue in the agenda? Okay, the next one is the state of Ansible 12.1277. Just opening that to see who tagged it for the agenda. So I guess, John, that was you as well, or you opened it at least?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if we could go over just as a group where we stand with the playbooks that still need to be converted over. Because there's been some stuff like for the Mac scripts, the Mac Stadium, that it looks like that PR had landed, but they don't run, that they like error out and stuff. If we can just go over like the status of that type of stuff.
Sure, I will try and share that. If I can get the right one.
Because I've been making like a lot of progress in removing the old playbooks, just there's some stuff that still needs to be migrated.
Okay, so I think I've got that up now.
Yeah.
Have you any idea what's erroring out in the new scripts on OS X? Because they were running fine on the Mac Stadium machines I was using.
I tried to run them a couple days ago, and then a week before. I can run them again later, and I can send the stack trace to you if you want.
That'd be brilliant, because I mean, I've set up all the machines in CI Node at the moment using that. But if there's an error, I'll fix it. As far as I'm aware, the only bug that I'm aware of is that we aren't currently adding Ccache to the path on the on CI, so it's not using Ccache to build on OS X.
Okay.
But if there's another error, I'll have a look at that.
Yeah. So we've already done like over 10 of the playbooks that are in the completed list. And then like those are all gone now. They've all been deleted. They're all in the main Ansible playbooks, Jenkins Worker create playbook. They're all gone. All those platforms. And then you can just scroll up a second. Yeah. So for the ones that are left, the Raspberry Pi Rod has a PR, which I was just running that locally before the meeting, trying to get that ready. For the Ubuntu 14.04, the PowerPC, the Java, trying to install that is not working right now. It's trying to pull something from GitHub or whatever, like the Tarball, I think it is, and that's like 404ing. So I'm not sure.
If you can open... So go ahead.
Is that an adopt OpenJDK binary?
I believe so, yeah.
That will be fixed within the week. Some of the binaries have had to be removed for legal reasons, but that will be rectified.
Okay, so then would you be able to look into the Java base role and just double check that that's using the right link?
Yes, yeah, I will. I mean, it should begin working again, but I can chase that up.
Is there an issue open for that?
There is on adopt OpenJDK side. There is. I'm not sure about on Node.
I know that the regular 1404 machines are fine, but it's the PowerPC that need the special Java binary and stuff that are having the problems right now.
Yeah, I'm just thinking having an issue open that we could assign to George so we don't forget would probably be good.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing for the minute.
Yeah.
And then the GitHub bot I've been working on, it's been difficult to work on that because I don't actually have access to the box. So I've been having Philip like run them himself and then paste back the errors, which is a little bit less than ideal, but you know, we're trying to get that. And then for the last few things are the Windows, which I'm not even sure if we have any scripts right now for Windows. Do you know?
I thought Joe had worked on them.
In the setup repo, there are in the old school layout.
Those run, or do they?
I'm not sure. The issue that I've found before is that it's going to get very messy if you want to implement Windows into that same create Jenkins worker. You might want to create a create Jenkins Windows worker or something, because otherwise it's going to get very messy.
Yeah, I can add a bit of background. So when I did most of the new Ansible folder work, there was no support for Windows abstraction in Ansible. This was 2021. So, and most of the commands for abstracting into Windows grew around there. So what happened was that Joao did a lot of independent work on testing that, but it never came to a point where we were like just being able to rely on it. So the Ansible repo wasn't really built to support that, but I think we're in a better shape now, so we could look at adding that. It's just a matter of seeing how much Bootstrap that's needed to get it going.
Yeah, you can certainly use roles and all that with Windows now. So we could certainly refactor them into the new sort of layout. Whether it can go into the same create worker script, you might have a few issues, but we can certainly refactor it.
Yeah, the tricky part back then was like specific commands, like fetching things. You had to install Cygwin and all this, but then they started doing abstractions in Ansible that you could rely on. So
yeah.
Okay. All right, so then that's an issue for Yoao, I guess, or Johan, do you want to look into that?
I'm certainly interested in helping out. I don't think I don't have the experience to actually fix all the issues. I mean, Joao works still with Windows on a daily basis, and I can't say I use it too much, but I'm certainly interested in looking at bridging it and making progress.
That makes sense.
I can certainly try and take a look. It's not going to be on the sort of back burner on my list of things to do, but I can certainly take a look if it needs something just to get it going or anything.
Yeah, I think like George, I'd want you to look at AIX first.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I think Joao has significant work on that already. Probably not in our repo, but we should definitely get in touch with him.
That sounds good.
Okay. And then quickly with the CentOS 5, I believe those machines can be retired now. Do we know what this? I know those had been around for a while and we've been wanting to get rid of them. Do you know if those can go away now?
No, because we're still using them for release. So this we need to coordinate with Rod, make sure that
which version?
Five. We can still release a Node 6 and maybe even Node 8. So make sure that either we have a Docker that can fake them or whatever. So I think, unfortunately, that until 8 goes end of life, we'll need a CentOS 5, probably just a 64-bit. So the 32-bit can most probably retire.
But we still support 32-bit on.
Yeah, but
6.
we have Ubuntu on 32-bit. Getting CentOS 5 on 32-bit is just a little bit of a pain.
And I don't know if it's been discussed, but I know there are enterprise Linux distributions that still lean on CentOS, RHEL, flavored distributions that it hasn't gone end of life, and I wonder if we feel like a responsibility to test against that for certain matrices as well. So it might be worth considering.
So our support guarantee is based on kernel version. We build on CentOS because it knows how to, like the dev toolchain is much better at building binaries that are compatible with other kernels and other distributions. So we test on CentOS and Ubuntu, but we build on CentOS. So, and again, and our guarantee is not for flavor, it is for kernel version and glibc version. So we're not too tied down. And the problem is that there's like no cloud provider that can spin up a CentOS 5 image, definitely not in 32-bit because like nobody supports that. In 64 bits, it's been end of life. So this is like a...
Yeah, it's like it's been EOL for, I believe, years now, CentOS 5. So that's just why I'm asking also from the perspective of there aren't like patches available if there were problems.
So there is Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5 extended super duper support for people who are still using it in the field.
Yeah,
So
and Oracle.
kind of like in that loop, but so we do that on like a very not voluntary, but we do that because we know there are a lot of people still using Node 6 on a derivative of Enterprise Linux 5 or CentOS 5. And until that diminishes significantly, I think we will have to, but we should do an effort to keep CentOS 5 in the mix.
Okay. And then just the last platform you have highlighted there, Michael, is the other one that needs to be migrated. I'm not sure if that's something that IBM people need to do.
So that's on George's list of the to-dos.
Yeah, it's worth noting there has actually been some work. I think it got closed out a while ago, just sort of lack of activity. It's kind of a little bit complicated. Some of the issues we've seen is that we can't replicate, for whatever reason, the AIX machines at the OSU are very different to the ones that we have internally at IBM. So we've found it very hard to run playbooks on new machines. And so it obviously makes the testing process quite hard, but I think it's got to be something that we just got to plow on with because we don't really have any stable AIX playbook right now.
The other thing we might do too is, I mean, the AIX playbook that is there is just a stub. Yeah. So it does a few core things and then we do the rest through manual instructions. We may, George, maybe the first thing is to just move that stub to the new infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we seem to have written is basically sort of workarounds for Ansible functions and modules that don't work. So in a lot of ways, I would argue that perhaps our effort would best be sort of pushing some of those patches up to Ansible to actually get something that might work with AIX in the near future.
Right.
And then we can cut this down a lot. But
I think it's kind of two things. One, it's just to unblock anything that it's currently blocking.
Yeah.
Which, there's not I don't know how hard it would be to take what's there, like what we have in the existing scripts, and then come up with something that just does that as opposed to trying to solve the whole problem, right?
Yeah.
And that might be, if that's easier, we should probably do that as a first step.
Yeah.
Just so that we're unblock this list, and then, we can work on filling out the rest of it.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, I want to, tell the new people and remind ourselves that we use the playbooks to spin up a new machine. I would really like to get to a point where we can even use the playbooks to refresh an existing machine, update expired packages, clean out junk, make sure the machines are very similar to each other, at least on the same platform, etc. So, because essentially spinning up a new machine is something that we do, once a year, maybe. So we need to keep in mind that the tasks that we do need on like something that will help us on short term is, for instance, being able to update Git. Like, not all our machines use, I'm not gonna say modern, like we use 5-year-old, 6-year-old Git, which is first riddled with security holes. Second of all, missing a lot of features, and that percolates up to our CI having to assume least common denominator, not using features like sparse checkout or shallow checkouts, speed things up because we don't have Git, and that is because we don't have a stable playbook.
I know that I started building like a package upgrade, but it was basically this upgrade world. But the abstractions are in there to manage multiple package managers. So I think there is a script in the playbooks folder or something for that. Perhaps it's worth taking a look.
I've seen it. We just need to get to a place where that one works. So like we get an immediate benefit from this effort. I think that will help a lot.
Okay, now we're 5 minutes left and still have some other issues. So I'm thinking we can probably move on unless there's more to be said on this one.
I'm fine to move on.
Okay, the next issue is discuss upgrade required Clang to 3.9. 1264. Just gonna see who added that. So Matthias, I think you added that to the agenda.
I think John added to agenda.
Possibly. We're just looking at 1264.
Yeah. So I see Matthias opened it and John added it to the agenda. And here we get to a problem which we constantly get into the circular problem. We want to keep our, since we support older Node versions, and we want to keep our compilation tool set the same, so that we don't need to change the release tool set and maybe break ABI compatibility. We need to figure out a way. So upgrading to Clang 3.9 is not a problem. The problem is that we need to have side-by-side versions for testing and releasing older Node versions.
So we can use Xcode's, I think it's Xcode Select, to switch between different Node versions. I've used that before in different CIs.
And that's Mac. So do we do Clang on other platforms? I think FreeBSD.
FreeBSD is Clang as well.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I'm even thinking Linux might use it.
So so then we get to platforms which are not as mature or well versed as Mac OS, and also we want to keep that in line with our GCC machines. We don't want to create two groups, one group of machines that has like extensively more features enabled than another group of machines that like doesn't progress the entire project forward. So essentially, if we can, I think that the main issue is, as long as we can run a couple of Clang and everything like LVM and LDB side by side, then there's no reason not to add 3.9 or.
Right, and we actually did that. We had to do that for the IBM platforms. There's a select compiler script that runs on all those to say, choose a newer version of GCC for later versions, or choose the older version. So it just sounds like somebody needs to work through the same thing for Clang as well.
Yeah,
so
I'd say
if we have that script running, like enabled for every machine, then we solve this.
Yeah, right now that script basically says, what platform am I on? Oh, I'm on AX, I'm going to do the selection. I'm on Linux PPC, I'm going to do the selection, and it ignores the other one. So if we just extended it, it requires updating Ansible so that you end up with two versions that can coexist, and then that script can be used to do the appropriate selection at runtime.
Yeah, I would say the tricky part is really packaging here. A lot of operating systems have package managers that allows us to install GCC multiple versions, Clang multiple versions, and all we have to do is basically change environment variables to pass the different tool chains to the build process and test process. So I think we have a lot of flexibility there, but the tricky part really comes to older operating systems or operating systems that doesn't allow us to pick and choose what version of Clang we want to run. So I think
absolutely.
I think just quickly being able to glance at which problems will be, which operating systems will be a headache and which ones will give us more flexibility. I mean, someone mentioned FreeBSD. It's a good example of where you can install Clang 38, 39, 40, 41, and so on, and just have them side by side. So
and other ones you'll probably have to compile it from source.
Exactly. So if we're to look at this from an Ansible playbook point of view, perhaps we just want to focus on a few operating systems where it's much simpler. Or package managers, rather. Because I don't see a limitation in like having to have separate build bots for this. It's just a matter of choosing which ones that installs more.
Yeah, I don't think we need separate build bots. We just need to extend the select script semantic to be able to be operative on more machines. That will solve a lot of problems.
Okay, so I think that one probably just needs somebody to dig in and start looking at what it's going to take on some of the platforms. I'm just looking at we're at time and we have 3 issues. Can people stick around to go a little bit longer, or do we want to table those for the next time?
So I think for Docker we need Rod. For the release post Martin, we should have Miles, and dropping 32-bit is anyway a big headache.
I can do the Docker demo if that's something people want, but the 3 last things are not super pressing.
I'd suggest we then try and do it next time, although we might, if we wanted to, we could schedule a meeting before the next, sooner than 3 weeks if we thought that made sense.
Yeah, we already, myself and Joy had set up a meeting sometime next week. I need to go through the doodle again just to touch base after the summit with regards to the commit queue and some of the new projects people are working on that are going to require a help from the build working group and hosting and boxes and servers and stuff that I need to go through the doodle again, pick out the time for next week. But that maybe we can move the Docker to the meeting next week or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say write it.
The rest of this stuff I think can just wait for 2 or 3 weeks. It's not a big crisis.
Say if anyone add to the open an issue and ask anyone if if they want to watch a demo, or if they want to watch but can't make the meeting. We can discuss this offline.
Okay, so basically we'll say table till next time, and you're right, maybe discussing that issue, how to get that done.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly then look at the YouTube channel to see if there's any questions, if I can find that. If anybody's got access to the YouTube channel handy and can check, that would be great, but I think it opened a window for me somewhere. YouTube channel.
I don't see any questions.
No questions. Okay. So I think then I will stop the stream, and if people can just hang in for a few minutes afterwards. Okay, so